Every single day, billions of dollars worth of global trade passes through one narrow stretch of water. Oil, food, electronics, industrial supplies, energy shipments. The modern global economy depends on it, and today that route is becoming one of the most dangerous trade corridors on Earth. The Red Sea. A region that most people rarely think about is now sitting at the center of a growing geopolitical and economic crisis. Cargo ships are being rerouted, shipping costs are rising, naval forces are increasing their presence, and global markets are watching nervously. Because when one of the world's most critical maritime corridors comes under pressure, the consequences extend far beyond the region itself. This is not just a regional security issue anymore. It is becoming a global economic problem. To understand why this matters so much, we first need to understand the enormous importance of the Red Sea itself. At first glance, the Red Sea may appear to be just another body of water connecting parts of the Middle East and Africa, but strategically it is one of the most important trade arteries in the modern world. The Red Sea connects directly to the Suez Canal, one of the busiest and most economically critical shipping routes on Earth. This route acts as a direct bridge between Europe and Asia. Every year, massive cargo vessels carrying energy, industrial equipment, raw materials, food products, consumer goods, and commercial shipments move through this corridor. For global shipping companies, this route saves enormous amounts of time and money. Without it, ships traveling between Asia and Europe would be forced to take much longer journeys around the southern tip of Africa. That detour can add thousands of kilometers to shipping routes, which means more fuel, higher costs, longer delivery times, and growing pressure on global supply chains. And this is exactly why the stability of the Red Sea matters to the entire world economy. Because globalization depends heavily on efficiency. The modern economic system was built around the assumption that goods could move quickly, cheaply, and continuously across international trade routes. Factories depend on fast deliveries. Retail markets depend on predictable supply chains. Energy markets depend on uninterrupted transportation. And when one major corridor becomes unstable, pressure spreads rapidly across the entire system. This is what makes maritime choke points so strategically important. A choke point is a narrow trade corridor through which enormous volumes of global commerce pass. And throughout history, control over these choke points has often meant control over economic influence itself. Empires once fought wars over maritime access and trade dominance. Today, global powers still understand the same reality. Trade routes are power, because whoever can secure, influence, or disrupt major shipping corridors holds enormous geopolitical leverage. And right now, the Red Sea is becoming one of the most heavily watched maritime corridors in the world. In recent months, instability and security threats in the region have forced global shipping companies to rethink their operations. Some vessels have reduced movement through the corridor entirely. Others have begun rerouting around Africa to avoid risk. That decision alone carries major economic consequences. Longer shipping routes mean increased fuel consumption. Insurance costs rise sharply in unstable regions. Transportation becomes more expensive. Delivery schedules become slower and less reliable, and eventually businesses and consumers across the world begin feeling the impact. What makes this situation even more dangerous is the timing. The global economy is already under pressure. Many countries continue struggling with inflation, slowing economic growth, supply chain vulnerabilities, and geopolitical uncertainty. In such an environment, disruptions to global trade routes become significantly more dangerous because modern economies are deeply interconnected. A shipping disruption in one region can affect manufacturing on another continent. A delay in cargo deliveries can disrupt entire production systems. An increase in transportation costs can spread inflationary pressure globally. This is the hidden fragility of globalization. The world economy may appear massive and resilient, but much of it depends on a few critical systems continuing to function smoothly. And one of those systems runs directly through the Red Sea. That is why governments, corporations, shipping companies, investors, and military powers are all paying extremely close attention to what happens here next. Because beneath the headlines lies a much larger question. What happens to the global economy when one of its most important trade arteries becomes unstable? The growing instability in the Red Sea is not only affecting shipping companies, it is beginning to reshape global economic behavior itself. As security risks increase in the region, major shipping firms are being forced to make difficult decisions. Some vessels are avoiding the corridor altogether. Others are traveling with increased security measures. Insurance premiums for commercial shipping have risen sharply, and naval forces from multiple countries are expanding their presence across the region. Because for global powers, this is no longer simply about one regional conflict. It is about protecting the flow of global trade. And when trade routes become militarized, the geopolitical consequences become far more serious. The United States has increased efforts to secure maritime movement in the region because uninterrupted shipping is directly tied to global economic stability. China is watching the situation equally closely. A massive portion of China's economy depends on maritime trade and imported energy flowing through these global shipping corridors. Any prolonged instability threatens supply chains, industrial production, and long-term economic security. Europe also faces enormous risks. Many European economies rely heavily on stable shipping routes connecting Asian manufacturing hubs to European markets. Longer shipping routes mean higher costs, slower deliveries, and growing inflationary pressure. This is why the Red Sea crisis has evolved into far more than a local security issue. It is now part of a much larger geopolitical struggle over trade, energy, and strategic influence. Because modern power is no longer measured only by military strength, it is also measured by economic resilience. The ability to secure trade routes, maintain supply chains, and protect energy flows has become one of the defining foundations of global influence. And this is exactly why maritime corridors remain so important in geopolitics. Whoever controls critical trade routes can shape global commerce itself. Throughout history, dominant powers understood this reality. From ancient trade empires to modern superpowers, control over strategic waterways has always translated into economic and political leverage. Today, the methods may look different, but the principle remains the same. The modern global economy still depends on a relatively small number of highly strategic corridors remaining stable. And when instability spreads across those corridors, the consequences travel rapidly across the world. Businesses begin preparing for uncertainty. Markets react to risk. Governments reassess vulnerabilities. Investors become cautious. And slowly, a regional crisis begins influencing global economic decisions far beyond the region itself. This may also accelerate a much larger global shift already taking place. Countries are increasingly realizing the dangers of overdependence on fragile supply chains and unstable trade routes. Some governments are now exploring alternative shipping corridors. Others are investing more heavily in domestic manufacturing and strategic economic security. In many ways, the world may be entering a new era of geopolitical fragmentation, an era where economics, trade, security, and global power become increasingly interconnected. And the Red Sea crisis may become one of the clearest examples of that transformation. Because this crisis reveals something deeper about the modern world. Globalization created extraordinary economic interconnection, but it also created vulnerability. A disruption in one strategic region can now affect economies across multiple continents. A threat to one trade corridor can influence global inflation, manufacturing systems, financial markets, and energy security. And as geopolitical competition continues rising across the world, these vulnerabilities are becoming increasingly visible. The Red Sea is no longer just a shipping corridor. It has become a geopolitical pressure point in the struggle for global economic stability. And perhaps the biggest lesson from this crisis is this. In the modern world order, trade routes are no longer just pathways for commerce, they are pathways of power. Because the nations that secure the arteries of global trade help shape the future of the global economy itself,